Today, top health officials call for patience as states and territories go their own way on easing restrictions.
We are all on the same road across Australia. It's just that different states and territories have had different starting points.
New coronavirus cases linked to a Melbourne abattoir, and a Newmarch house resident dies despite recovering from COVID-19. Queensland's Deputy Premier Jackie Trad stands aside from ministerial duties over Crime and Corruption Commission investigation.
I will cooperate fully with this investigation. It will provide me with an opportunity to set the record straight.
And the Queen marks the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in Europe, calling on Britain to never give up and never despair. Hello, welcome to ABC News. I'm Kathryn Robinson. The weather around the capital cities tomorrow. Brisbane mostly sunny, Sydney sunny, mostly sunny in Canberra. A possible shower for Melbourne, mostly sunny in Hobart. A possible shower for Adelaide, Perth and Darwin likely to be sunny. But first today, the Deputy CMO, Professor Paul Kelly, has just given an update. He expanded on the road out analogy, saying that some states have started at different points or are driving at different speeds, and saying there are no roadblocks.
This is a roadmap. We are all on the same road across Australia. It's just that different states and territories have had different starting points, and they will be using that same roadmap but at slightly different speeds. I want to really be clear, there are no roadblocks in this roadmap. The only one that we will have potentially, and this is why we're being cautious about our restart of these various activities, is the virus itself. The third step is not quite back to normal as it was before COVID-19, and I think we've been quite open about this from the beginning, that the new normal, the COVID-safe normal for Australia, may not be the normal that we were used to prior to January of this year. But there are a number of things in a kind of 3+ stage, which we felt would almost certainly not be in stage 3, but when they may be able to be recommenced it's too far in the future at this stage to consider an actual date. So there's no stage 4 as such, but there are a number of things, for example, the opening of the borders to international travel. That's one that so far into the future we weren't really sure how that might actually happen yet.
That was the Deputy CMO Paul Kelly speaking just moments ago. Well, senior correspondent Phil Williams joins me now from Canberra. And Phil, we heard from the professor there talking about this 3-step plan to recovery being a watershed moment, but he was very keen to urge the nation to move cautiously ahead.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, each state and territory has to move at their own pace. That's a given. That's the Prime Minister made that clear. And the various chief ministers and premiers have responded in very different ways, and some have yet to respond to that first stage 1. But it's, I guess, the starting gun has been fired. And people are off and running and opening up in different ways, and that will be a relief to those that enjoy the benefits of that. But of course, the caution from Paul Kelly is that if we get large outbreaks, that could force some sort of reconsideration or a delay to the next stage. And these stages are not in cement. Some states will pick and choose from stage 1 and stage 2, move quickly to stage 2, but that all depends on their success or lack of success in controlling the virus in their various jurisdictions.
And he did have a message for Mother's Day as well when he was asked by a journalist.
Yes, he did. Of course, I suspect his mother probably wants a big hug from him too. And he really basically was asked, is it safe? He basically said, look, if you've got elderly mothers or fathers, whoever needs a hug, keep your distance, basically. It's still not quite safe. Perhaps younger mothers, it's okay. But the overarching message is there, still, we're not out of this. The virus is still out there. Be cautious, keep your social distancing. Gather, yes. See your family, yes. But do it in a way that's safe.
And just before we move on, he spoke about the take-up of the app as well.
Yep, we're up to, where are we up to?
Just over 5, yeah.
Just over 5 million. Now, that hasn't increased drastically in the last 24 hours. And of course, there are some question marks about how well it operates, particularly on iPhones. And those questions will have to be sorted out. But there is no prescriptive tally that they want to get to. Early on, there was talk about 60%, and that would be around about 10 million. But he did say that all but one jurisdiction has signed up to using the app to help trace those that might have come in contact with those with the virus. So I think the government's pretty pleased with the take-up. Of course, they'd be ecstatic if it was 100%, but it's not. But it is increasing by some tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands each day.
He seemed pleased by the 5.4, I think it was. Just moving on to China and the origins of this virus, is China changing its tune at all about the idea of a review and its part that it's played in the coronavirus pandemic?
Yes, there is quite a substantial change, and that is that a spokesman from the Foreign Ministry there has said that that China will support and cooperate with an inquiry if it's conducted under the auspices of the WHO. That's been criticised. That organisation, of course, criticised by the Americans and defunded by the Americans, but it said it wants that inquiry to happen after the pandemic. Well, that could be a very long time, and I don't think that would satisfy the countries like Australia that really want answers much sooner than that. They want to know where it started, why it started, and what lessons we can learn about controlling perhaps other threats like that in the future.
That last point, probably the most salient. Phil Williams, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, the New South Wales Health Minister has defended the Premier's decision not to announce an easing of restrictions, despite National Cabinet releasing a national strategy for relaxing COVID-19 rules. The three-step plan is intended to be rolled out between now and July, with Premiers and Chief Ministers to choose when to adopt each step. New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian is yet to offer a timeline for the state. Mr Hazzard says the state is still vulnerable.
I understand the energy and exuberance about wanting us to lay out a timetable. All I can say is that at this point, the highest priority for the Premier and for me and Dr Chance is to keep people safe, but also to find the right balance that, as the Premier has said on a number of occasions, each time we make a change, and we've made a number of them along the way, but if we make those changes, we also have to be able to have good information and good insight as to the likely consequences. So I admire your energy and enthusiasm for a timetable, but it is Saturday and we are working on it. I don't think we've had, not one of the three of us have had a day off since the end of the second week of February. So we've been 3 months of everyday working, and we continue to work today, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can with a reasonable sort of way forward.
Brad Hazzard there. The New South Wales opposition is calling on the Premier to release a plan for easing restrictions after the release of those national guidelines. Labor leader Jody Mckay says she'd like to see a detailed roadmap similar to Queensland.
Now we've seen these good results, people want to know now what will happen. And we're not advocating for an ad hoc approach. What we want to see is a planned approach that gives people certainty, consistency and assurance in terms of how they're going to live their lives. That's all they want. They want to know, what is the rest of May going to look like? What will I be doing in June? And what can I expect in July? So I can plan my life, so I know when I'm going back to work. I know when I can take my child to a playground. I know when I can gather in group numbers other than 10 or 5, when I can attend a wedding, when a funeral will be back to normal as well. All these issues that are playing into how people are seeing their life over the next 3 months. So what I'm saying to the Premier is please adopt the plan similar to what Queensland has, which is a transparent plan for May, June and July.
The number of coronavirus cases in Victoria has risen by 10 to 1,477. 4 are linked to an outbreak at an abattoir in Melbourne's west, bringing the total number of cases there to 75. The Victorian Premier is planning to make an announcement about easing restrictions on Monday. Today, the Attorney-General, Jill Hennessy, announced $17.5 million in funding for people impacted by the crisis.
The total number of tests in Victoria has significantly increased, and we know in terms of the testing stations that have been set up, we've now hit approximately around 140,000 tests from that blitz. We of course don't have all of the test results back, but given our initial target was 100,000, we're very, very pleased with that result. In terms of police activity, police have conducted 854 police checks in the past 24 hours, and they've issued 61 fines. So today we're really delighted as a government to be making an announcement of a $17.5 million legal assistance package that's really targeted at providing legal assistance to people who are affected by the coronavirus outbreak. A large portion of that funding will go to community legal centres and legal aid who are trying to support the community who need different forms of legal support. The sorts of legal support that our community legal services and legal assistance sector are under pressure to provide largely relate to inquiries around things like family violence, around employment law, around social security entitlements, tenancy issues, debt issues and consumer credit contracts. So all of those things that impact upon people's ability to keep a roof over their head, to keep themselves safe, to have a job, to be able to enforce their rights. We've seen a really significant increase on the request for information, advice and legal support within our community legal services sector.
Jill Hennessy there, the Victorian Attorney-General. Well, an elderly resident has died at Sydney's Newmarch house after contracting and then recovering from coronavirus. 92-year-old Faye Rendoth died yesterday after testing positive to the virus 3 weeks ago. Her granddaughter, Savannah Robinson, says Mrs Rendoth would still have been alive if not for her COVID-19 diagnosis. 32 staff and 37 residents have contracted the virus at the aged care home. Dr Jody Mckay from New South Wales Health says the advice is that the death of Mrs Rendoth was not directly related to COVID-19.
So we've had a discussion with the infectious disease doctor looking after Newmarch, including the residents, and the doctor is in the best place to understand what the illness was and the cause of death and so on. So without going into personal details, we understand that the person had COVID, had recovered, had other illnesses and was elderly and had died. The doctor does not believe directly related to COVID. So that's what we can say.
Queensland's Deputy Premier Jackie Trad has announced she's standing aside from her ministerial duties over a Crime and Corruption Commission investigation. Tim Sponston reports.
It'll surely send shockwaves through the Queensland Government ranks as Deputy Premier and Treasurer Jackie Trad has stood aside from her ministerial responsibilities. It comes after the state's corruption watchdog, the Crime and Corruption Commission, launched an investigation into the appointment of a principal for a school under construction in her electorate of South Brisbane. A candidate for principal was selected for the role by a panel, but after a meeting between the candidate, the Department of Education and Ms Trad, the role was then re-advertised. Another candidate was then selected for the position. The matter was referred to the CCC last year. The government says new modelling for the school meant it could re-advertise the position at a higher level, and Ms Trad has denied any wrongdoing.
Let me be clear. No applicant to the principal position was known to me in any capacity, personal, political or professional. Further, I have never expressed a view to anyone on who should fill that role. To ensure that this is not a distraction for the Premier and for the Labor government, I advised the Premier last night that I will be standing aside from my ministerial duties until the investigation is concluded.
In a statement, Queensland's Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk says she accepts that Ms Trad's decision is the correct course of action and will be assuming her ministerial duties until further notice. Ms Trad says she still intends on running for her seat in South Brisbane for the state election later this year, but it couldn't come at a worse time while the state reels with the financial fallout of coronavirus.
Tim Swanston there. Queensland's Shadow Education Minister Jarrod Bleijie says Ms Trad should have been sacked months ago.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that if you apply for a job and you get the job, and then you're called into Jackie Trad's office and then the position's re-advertised, then it's quite clear what I'm saying. Jackie Trad interfered with the independent selection of a school principal in Queensland. She is arrogant. She thinks she is above everybody else in Queensland. Jackie Trad thinks she can get away with this stuff because of her arrogance and the belief that she is above everybody else. Well, my message to Jackie Trad and to the Premier is she's not.
China has kicked out a second Australian journalist in 4 months in a crackdown on foreign media. Veteran New York Times reporter Chris Buckley, who spent 76 days locked down in Wuhan, has had to leave the country after his visa wasn't renewed. The media is now turning to an increasingly bitter stage for US-China rivalry. China correspondent Bill Birtles reports from Beijing.
After 24 years in China, most of it in Beijing, Chris Buckley knows what it's like to be watched. But even he was surprised that an interview with the ABC would prompt at least 3 men to follow and film us from a distance.
It's become a much tougher, more challenging place to report. It's become more controlled, more centralised, more authoritarian.
For more than 2 decades, Chris Buckley has asked questions of China's leaders and travelled the country to tell stories of ordinary Chinese. Last year, with a colleague, he published the biggest leak of Chinese government documents in decades, detailing the extremely coercive measures authorities used to lock up ethnic minority Muslims in re-education centres. More recently, he spent 76 days under lockdown in Wuhan, risking his health and getting stories from the original viral epicentre, even as authorities refused to renew his press card.
You could see the flux of emotions that people had to live through, the fear that they had to live through, but also the spirit that people had as well. And to me, that was a real privilege to be there and to be given an opportunity to describe that and share that with the rest of the world.
China's foreign ministry says it's simply a case of his visa running out while he was stuck in Wuhan, and he's welcome to reapply from abroad in future.
Don't overthink it. The laws and regulations are the laws and regulations. Chris Buckley encountered a problematic situation when it was time to extend his visa. The New York Times will negotiate and settle the issue.
Chris Buckley's departure comes after another investigative Australian journalist working for US media, Philip Wen, was expelled from China in February. In total, 19 foreign reporters, all working for US media, have been kicked out or haven't had their visas renewed in the past 12 months.
Many of the reporters were expelled in retaliation for the US capping the number of visas for Chinese state media workers in America. But it's no coincidence the journalists Beijing ousted include investigative reporters who have done the most to show what's really going on here.
CGTN. As censorship mutes foreign voices in China, Beijing's increasingly flooding international social media with its view of the world. China's government media bureaus are expanding abroad.
I just think in the end, if you're going to turn that interflow between China and the rest of the world off, it's dangerous for both sides. And it just creates more of room for vacuum, more room for speculation, rumours and poorly sourced stories.
And with much of the world still in the grips of the pandemic, it's an erosion of press freedoms that'll be felt more than ever. Bill Birtles, ABC News, Beijing.
Well, Europe has been marking the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. Severely scaled-down events have been taking place, with simple ceremonies being held because of the coronavirus restrictions. In Germany, Chancellor Angela Merkel has laid a wreath at the War Monument in Berlin, while French President Emmanuel Macron has been joined by former presidents for a ceremony in Paris. In Britain, Prince Charles led a 2-minute silence outside Balmoral Estate. Military jets flew over major cities and 1940s-style tea parties took place in homes. The Queen delivered her message from Buckingham Palace, encouraging people to never give up and never despair, mirroring her father's message from 75 years ago.
Many people laid down their lives in that terrible conflict. They fought so we could live in peace, at home and abroad. They died so we could live as free people in a world of free nations. They risked all so our families and neighbourhoods could be safe. We should and will remember them. As I now reflect on my father's words and the joyous celebrations which some of us experienced firsthand, I'm thankful for the strength and courage that the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and all our allies displayed. The wartime generation knew that the best way to honour those who did not come back from the war was to ensure that it didn't happen again. The greatest tribute to their sacrifice is that countries who were once sworn enemies are now friends, working side by side for the peace, health and prosperity of us all.
The New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller will earn almost $650,000 a year after the Premier directed his pay to be increased. The state's remuneration tribunal has granted the Commissioner an extra $87,000 to reflect his work managing the state's COVID-19 response while also running the police force. Labor has criticised the decision, saying Premier Gladys Berejiklian should explain the increase to other workers who have had their pay cut. In Victoria, a man wanted for questioning over the death of a woman in South Melbourne last week remains on the run. The body of 26-year-old Ellie Price was discovered in her Park Street apartment on Monday, but police believe she died after being assaulted the week before. Detectives from the Homicide Squad and Fugitive Task Force are appealing for the public help to find 33-year-old Richard Barbaro, who had been in a relationship with the victim. Ms Price's car was found yesterday dumped at Diggers Rest in Melbourne's northwest. 4 men aged in their 40s and 50s remain in a critical condition after an explosion at a central Queensland mine on Wednesday. The miners are being treated for burns at the Royal Brisbane Hospital after they were flown from Moranbah. A 44-year-old man is in a good condition. Darwin's iconic open-air weekend markets have resumed as COVID-19 restrictions ease in the Northern Territory faster than anywhere else in Australia. Many Territorians say they feel safer to be out and about than they would be in other parts of the country. Spirits have also been buoyed by a cool start to the dry season after a prolonged humid wet season. Nicholas Hines has more.
People are out and about here at Parap markets. 6 weeks after they were closed due to coronavirus restrictions, the markets have reopened and people are out in force, lining up for their luxes, a Saturday morning tradition here in Darwin.
The markets are back, it's so exciting. We did a little bit of bribery this morning at home, got everything ready so we could get down here early because the queues are a little bit longer.
Organisers closed the market in March when coronavirus restrictions came into effect here in the Northern Territory. But with no cases of community transmission and just 2 active COVID-19 cases left here, restrictions are starting to ease and the markets are a sign of the new normal.
Just so grateful to be in the Territory and be safe. That's all I can say.
It feels great!
Many people here are trying to follow the physical distancing guidelines that are marked out on the floor and in signs throughout the market. But with crowds building, it's proving a challenge to stay 1.5 metres apart from others.
It's pretty hard in some areas, but they're doing their best, so you can only try.
I don't think it's happening. We're not doing it.
The return of the Parap markets here in Darwin is a sign that things are slowly getting back to normal. We'll see pubs reopen on Friday, and within a month, most restrictions here in the Northern Territory will ease, apart from those all-important strict border controls that are going to remain in place indefinitely.
The New Zealand Warriors will self-quarantine in Tamworth for an extra 4 days. The team opted to welcome Nathaniel Roche into the camp on Thursday, meaning the 2-week quarantine period would start again. The hooker was set to isolate on his own, but the team leadership group decided he should join the team. The decision means the majority of the team will now spend 18 days in Tamworth before heading to the Central Coast a week before the competition start date. AOC President John Coates believes hosting the Olympics in southeast Queensland in 2032 could prove a much-needed financial boost. Coates confirmed the proposal to host the Olympics in 12 years' time was gathering pace. The bid, which would involve events across Brisbane, the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast, is being discussed with the IOC's Future Host Committee. Coates believes the event would provide a good economic boost for the region.
Well, this is even better because the idea of this is
using existing community and sporting venues and turbocharging, my words today, the economy at a time it needs it in terms of new road and rail infrastructure.
Football has returned in Asia and 2 Australians were involved. The Korean League kicked off last night with journalists and officials required to have a temperature check upon arrival. Coaches and players on the bench were forced to wear masks. There was no crowd in attendance as John Book Motors took on the Suwon Blue Wings. Adam Taggart and Terry Antonis featured for the Blue Wings. Antonis was sent off in the 75th minute for a dangerous tackle. His side eventually lost 1-0 to the defending champions. Magician Roy Horn of the duos Siegfried and Roy has died after suffering complications from coronavirus. Originally from Germany, the duo had been an institution in Las Vegas where their magic and use of exotic animals would attract sellout crowds. He was injured in 2003 when he was attacked by a tiger on stage at a Las Vegas casino. Mr. Horn died at the age of 75. Taking a look at the satellite, a strong cold front is moving across southeast Australia, bringing some rain and spots of hail to Tasmania, Victoria and South Australia. On the synoptic, we can see a system over southern WA that's triggering some showers over South Australia. Looking around the country for tomorrow, and Queensland will be mostly sunny with some late showers in the southeast. A mostly sunny day for New South Wales. Clear skies in the northwest and windy conditions for the ACT and Alpine areas. Mostly sunny for Victoria, with early fog in the northeast and some showers in the southwest. Tasmania will see showers and storms in the southwest, late showers in the southeast, mostly sunny in the north, windy over the highlands. South Australia will also be mostly sunny in the central and northern areas, showers in the southeast, clearing showers in the west. A mostly sunny day for Western Australia, some cloud cover in the north. The Northern Territory will be mostly sunny in the top end and in the south, showers in the Arnhem, windy over the interior. Let's take a look now at the capital cities for Monday. Brisbane, mostly sunny. Sydney, sunny. Some early frost for Canberra. Mostly sunny in Melbourne. Cloudy in Hobart. Adelaide and Perth, mostly sunny. And a sunny day on the way for Darwin. And that is the latest from ABC News. I'm Kathryn Robinson. Thanks for your company. Do stay with us. The close of business is next.
I think in our lifetime this is